Hello and welcome to Undercurrent. I'm Lucy Marchant. Australia has a set of laws designed to protect the flora and fauna of the country. Recently, the government has proposed a new set of laws. Jonathan Davidson with the report.
For the first time in over 50 years, Western Australia is introducing new environmental protection laws. While an upcoming bill introduces stiff new penalties, it has attracted some controversy because it allows the Minister for Environment to authorise the extinction of a species. So WA contains a majority of Australia's biodiversity hotspots. Is this bill a step in the right direction?
Look, we were really excited when this bill was announced, as it has been 66 years since there's been an upgrade to our biodiversity laws. And then when we dug deeper and got 5 different pieces of analysis from different environmental lawyers, chatted to experts in policy and environmental law, it really became clear that without any community consultation, this bill is really isn't an improvement from the current 1950s Act.
The Minister for Environment told Undercurrent that amendments suggested by the Greens were welcome, but debate would continue. So far, the so-called God clause remains untouched. So what are some of the weaknesses of this bill?
Well, the key weakness in the bill is the clarity around extinction. The minister is given the right to sign away a species extinction, which is a real concern. The current powers of the minister are that he can do this, but what the bill does is makes it very explicit. It says the minister must table something in the Parliament and that the governor must sign off on it. Now, in no way do we believe that that's acceptable, and I have an amendment proposing that such a decision is debated in both houses of Parliament. Another key clause is that when the minister decides to make a species protected, he currently doesn't have to. The clause is ambiguous about how much advice he gets from scientists. And our amendment on the paper is that he must consult with scientists and that he must take their advice into consideration. The government did not consult with the conservation sector in the formulation of this bill. Basically, it made a strategic decision that consultation would slow it down. This is my guess, my educated guess, that consultation would slow it down, and also that the property interests and developer interests might yet again push it back to to someone's bottom drawer, and it wouldn't hit the table. So they made a strategic decision not to consult, and this is one of the suggestions that would have made this bill much better.
There seems to be unfettered ministerial discretion, so the minister can actually say, you're exempt from this bill for these reasons, to anyone, anywhere, anytime. The Premier gave his view that if there were valid amendments to be made, that they would be made. Yet we've seen the bill go through the lower house, and now it's almost at passing the upper house without any amendments made by the Liberal National Government, and many suggested by scientists, by conservationists, by the Labor, by the Greens. There's been a lot of recommendations, but without any consultation on this bill, no parliamentary committee even looking at it to see, if it's robust enough, and no amendments made. There's been no changes to the bill, so therefore we really feel that the community hasn't been consulted and the bill shouldn't pass in its current form.
The most important thing is that the minister of the day and that the government of the day has a commitment to protect our environment.
I'm Jonathan Davidson, and you're watching Undercurrent.
Every year, the Chinese consulate holds an open day for high school and university students to experience a taste of China. And now you can experience it too. We're at the Consulate of China here in East Perth, where they're holding a very special open day. Let's check it out.
Good morning. Welcome to the open day of the Chinese Consulate General. The purpose of our open day event is to showcase various aspects of Chinese traditional culture.
Today we have the third open day for the third consecutive year. in the Consulate General. We are going to showcase the traditional Chinese culture, the traditional part. That is the way of thinking and the way of life. For instance, the Chinese people is very friendly. That is the traditional Chinese culture. The main part of the culture, friendly and to be modest, to be trustworthy, and also the Chinese people is very cooperative with the outside world, with the people all over the world, and the Chinese people also stress on harmonious coexistence with people all over the world. So that is the we call the moral codes, or the culture, the thinking, the aspects.
We're making dumpling here, very traditional Chinese food. And let's begin. Well, this is made of flour. We mix the flour with water and then roll it and do it like this. And today we have meat, vegetable, onions, and sometimes we put shrimp inside to make more delicious.
So what meat is inside today?
I think it's pork. Yeah. It looks like art.
It is. Have you ever made dumplings before?
No. I
No?
just help my mom make little.
Yeah. Have you ever eaten dumplings before?
Yeah, my favorite.
Traditional Chinese martial art is a culture. So we try to hopefully can use our art and our culture to share for Australia. The Chinese Kung Fu culture is very deep. Basically, we learning martial art is a part of learning your heart. And kindness and rightness is very important.
Have you ever done any Chinese calligraphy before?
Yes, but when I was very little, so I don't really remember how it goes. Yeah.
And are you excited about doing some calligraphy today?
Yeah, very excited. I think it's very interesting to learn how they wrote.
What were you looking forward to the most today?
Making dumplings. Yeah, because I love Chinese food. So yeah.
Did you like any of the performances?
Yeah, I really enjoyed them, especially the ones where they played an instrument. Those are really interesting. Yeah.
And how important is it that students from multicultural backgrounds get together and do things like this?
I think it's very good that people share their cultures and other people learn how other cultures are. Yeah, I think it's very interesting.
We hope all these will provide an opportunity for the young people of Australia to get to know more about China.
Lucy Marchand for Undercurrent. Perth was recently ranked the 7th most livable city in the world. Bas Tadros hit the streets to find out your views.
Today we're taking to the streets of Perth to find out what people think about Perth being ranked 7th as the most livable city in the world. And is this survey even accurate with its livable cities being ranked the way that they are?
Perth is climbing the ranks of the world's most livable cities, up one spot to number 7, but it's still lagging behind Melbourne and even Adelaide.
Vienna and Vancouver came second and third, Adelaide snatching a tie for fifth, Perth in at seventh, up one spot from last year.
Is 7 a good number in terms of ranking for the most livable city in the world?
Well, after travelling to Europe twice in the last 4 years, it's always good to come home, and there's so many wonderful things. So I think it should have been ranked a little bit higher.
Number 7, I would have thought we should be number 1, actually.
I've noticed that it's dropped from last year, fair enough. Look, I think it's quite realistic as well.
We are quite expensive as a state, should I say, let alone in Australia. But yeah, I'm quite surprised we're 7th. I would have thought we'd be much higher.
Top 10 in the world's pretty good, isn't it? I mean, Melbourne's ranked higher, but Melbourne's got a bit more of a bar scene and more things happening, so I think Perth's done pretty well.
But I think that is a good ranking, and everyone who is in the first 20 have to be proud of their city.
What do you think in terms of features or highlights about Perth that you like the most?
The Swan River, that is my favourite part, and the beaches.
Beautiful, clean, fresh, lovely environment.
Everything's so clean, it's just lovely. And the waterways and everywhere you go to, you know, like you wander around these spots, lovely cafes, beautiful parks.
We've got a beautiful coast, and yeah, that's pretty much one of the main things for me, is our coastline.
We have 300 sunny days out of 365. That's a big draw card.
And you've got to get people to hear. When they walk around places like this, they can see how wonderful a place it is, and actually bits of it remind you of Europe.
What do you think Perth could do in future to rank higher?
Melbourne is a good place to look to. It's a similar climate to ours, except they have 4 seasons in one day. We've got a better climate, so we should rate higher.
Maybe a few more big-scale entertainment sort of things could bring more people towards the city.
So we have world-class venues that I think could be promoted a lot more. They're here, we've just got to let everybody know, but not too many.
More activities, more things going on.
What kind of things do you think?
Like where I live, basically, there's a sort of like a food market that's on Friday, and there's a farmer's market and that sort of stuff. It just makes it a more interesting place to live.
So when we got here, we didn't know that you could have free transport. So it's just little things that need to be pronounced a bit more. And I think when they get the train station going out to the airport as well, I think things like that will be make a big difference.
More investment into art and cultural attractions. You know, like we have Fringe and Festival of Perth, but that only takes a small chunk of our art and culture life. I think that should be maybe spread out more throughout the year.
I know people say it's a slow-paced city, but I think it's perfect, just, yeah, the way it is.
Bas Tadros for Undercurrent.
Stay with us for more Undercurrent after a short break. Welcome back to Undercurrent. Every Australian has the right to be in a workplace free of violence, discrimination and harassment, but that isn't always the case. Bas Tadros with the report.
One of the most common stresses today that's impacting mental health is workplace culture. The burdens and the impact of stress at work in the workplace is causing people to not only take more sick days off or live for the weekend, but it's also actually having people become more depressed, anxious, and in some cases suicidal. Are we actually seeing humans' rights being abused in the workplace?
There would be. I think for Australia, some of the key areas that organisations are saying we need more attention on are issues of overseas abuses that Australian companies are linked to, issues of Indigenous, the role of Indigenous people in workplaces and what's being done about that. But also, as you say, what's happening in workplaces, and we've seen discrimination on the basis of sexuality, discrimination on the basis of age, and so it's a number of these issues that non-government organisations are saying the government can't just talk about this, can't make nice statements in Geneva. They've got to start moving on this in Australia. And there is support from business, and so we want to see this national action plan, a strategy for how these UN guiding principles will be implemented in Australia. The issues that non-government organisations are looking at is they're saying it has to be a national action plan. So there must be, firstly they're saying there needs to be a multi-stakeholder group involved in this. It isn't just someone in Canberra or myself or someone who thinks they know about this. There has to be a broad involvement from business, from industry associations, from community groups, unions, academia. They need to be involved in saying, well, how can this work?
Do you think that workplace culture would be something that would be encompassed under the human rights category?
Definitely. That's one of the issues that the UN guiding principles talk about. It can't just be a statement. It can't be something on your website. It can't be a media release by the president or the CEO of the company. It must be there must be procedures to put that in place within your company, and we're starting to see mechanisms by which these things can be monitored, can be tested, and there are cases where companies have been told, look, you might have a statement, but you're not actually putting that into place, and that's a problem if you're not doing that.
Is there any advice that you'd give to, I guess, employees or employers to reference any particular resources for them to get more adverse with, or a bit more aware of this, I should say?
The first thing is the UN guiding principles on business and human rights. So that can be found on many different websites adopted by the UN in 2011. One of the things the joint statement from civil society is saying is the Australian government should also be doing more to be making businesses aware of this, so it doesn't just sit as something that the Department of Foreign Affairs knows about, but ideally it needs to get out further as well. And there's a role for civil society, there's a role for organisations like Australian Lawyers for Human Rights and others to be explaining and advocating the use of these.
Bas Tadros for Undercurrent.
Innovate Australia held a summit to discuss the challenges faced by women in innovation. Sandy DiRocco reports.
Today we're joining Innovate Australia on their summit called Women and Science. We have some guest speakers, including Senator Linda Reynolds. I'm interested in getting to know these powerful women and some of the advice they have to give. How did you start? How did all this come about?
We started organizing events about over 5 years ago. Free events, networking events in the area of innovation. That's the first time we do a theme, Women of Science Innovation, which I thought was very important. You know, I'm proud father of a daughter, Patricia. You know, I'm very proud of her. So, so I feel it's very important as well. I think it's a really good way to give women who actually are leaders in the field to actually give them forum to actually share that.
The challenges women face in innovation are really quite varied, and a lot of them are subtle. We see often structural challenges within industry and within sectors that prohibit women from entering innovative businesses and innovative jobs. We often see role stereotyping, which is a big problem for women. There's an assumption oftentimes that women are supposed to be in certain industries, and when they enter industries that may be non-traditional, like your engineering space, it is something that doesn't always sit very naturally with a lot of audiences.
Do you think Australia has the political framework that encourages women innovators?
That's an interesting question. We certainly see a lot of policy considerations being made around women's leadership at both state and federal government level, but I think there is definitely more that can be done. If you look at the federal cabinet, we have only a very small proportion of females in the federal cabinet. So I think a lot of the times government needs to practice what it preaches as well, and in that context, yes, definitely more can be done.
I'm only the second ever female marine engineer officer in submarines, and it's an incredibly exciting and challenging role. So I wanted to promote that, but also have done a lot of thinking recently about what it is to be a woman in a very male-dominated environment, and how we can be supported and how we can best grow. The leadership and personal development, personal growth aspects of being in the Navy is a very big focus for them. Leadership training starts from day one, and I've had a whole lot of support. I've been sponsored onto leadership programs recently, being supported to come and speak at events like this and encourage STEM careers for women. So absolutely support. I wouldn't be here without the support.
Innovate Australia started about 5 years ago with my colleague Peter Kasperschak. We met in an event almost 2 years ago. We started a company, not-for-profit organisation, with two other members and two other directors, which is Innovate Australia.
And how have you seen this grow over the last few years?
The last few years were interesting because we also at the same time we noticed that this drop-off of the mining boom. There's lots of effort that have been generated recently to diversify, to look at something else, and innovation is very important at this level.
Today we've just seen a perfect example of that. Women from all industries across the many careers in science, technology and engineering, and it's truly inspirational for other women to hear what women are doing already in the sciences and the difference they're making, and just how easy it is for them to actually get into the professions.
I'm Sandy Di Rocco for Undercurrent.
An exhibition highlighting the life of Fidel Castro was held last week to celebrate his 90th birthday. Angela Albuquerque.
Fidel is Fidel, photographs by Roberto Chile, a wonderful exhibition put on by the Cuban Australian Society for Perth people to enjoy, to celebrate the 90th birthday of Fidel Castro.
Fidel is a real human being, a complete human being. He listens a lot, and for what I've read, or people who had interviewed him or talked to him, he's concerned about people. He listens and expresses his views with very, very deep thoughts on humanity, world problems, and it's amazing what Fidel is. I come from Guatemala, a third world country next to Mexico and Central America, where we have very limited number of doctors, for example, or teachers. More than 60% of people are indigenous people. He don't have access to jobs, to education, to health. And in 2002, when there was the Hurricane Mitch, the first people who sent doctors to help in Guatemala was Cuba.
And it was part of a project to celebrate Fidel Castro's 90th birthday. And the idea was that there would be 90 exhibitions in 90 countries throughout the world celebrating his birthday. And this is going to be one of them. This is quite a coup for Perth. Roberto Chile, the photographer, is a renowned Cuban documentary maker and photographer, a string of awards from Latin American countries. And to have the opportunity to show his work here and to celebrate Castro's birthday is really quite a coup, yes.
I'm honored that I've been invited to this exhibition in the framework of the 90th anniversary of Comrade Fidel Castro. The main message that I'd like to share here in Perth is that I ask the people from Perth to read about our history, to read about Cuba, to have a better idea of our country, taking into account that our country has been, the media has been portraying our country in a wrong way. So I think this exhibition will encourage people from Perth to read the real history of Cuba.
This is what Fidel have done to many people around the world. I never met him. I've been close to him, but I never met him. But I have learned a lot of what he has done. And this is one of my favorite pictures here behind me. This photograph is in 190 publicity bus stops in Germany and Switzerland. And that was taken in 2010, and Fidel is reflecting about peace. You see how today there are drums of war in the Asia-Pacific, particularly here in the Asia-Pacific, in the Middle East. And Fidel says, we need to fight for peace. We need to save the world. And it is possible. And he famously said, another world is possible, and I believe in that.
We are a very courageous people. That we've been fighting for our independence since our colonial period. As you know, we were a colony of Spain, and since that time we were fighting for our independence. And thanks to the revolution led by Fidel Castro, we've been able to obtain our real independence. This is a way also to invite you to go to visit Cuba, to see with your own eyes how the Cuban people is. We are a very friendly country. Our people is very warm people. It's been very courageous, and we Cuban people deserve the best that we can do.
What we have here is a depiction of someone who has done astonishing things. He instigated and saw the Cuban Revolution through. Here he is, he's in his 80s, he's just like every other human, negotiating the process of aging. And that kind of forces us to reflect on our own physicality, on our own achievements.
The union really has been very supportive of what I do. We have sponsored trips, visitors to come and talk to us, sponsored our members to travel there and learn and see for themselves.
We've already had a lot of support, a lot of interest, and we just hope that this builds an awareness of Cuban culture in the wider community.
Angela Albuquerque for Undercurrent.
Thank you for watching this episode of Undercurrent. Don't forget to catch up with us online at wtvperth.com.au. Take care, and we'll see you next week.